Last week, I shared with you my recently completed North Shore beanie by Haley Smedley of Ozetta, and y'all had really nice things to say about not only the color, but also just the way the hat looks in general. However, a really common comment that came up below that video was just how much this hat resembled the Oslo Hat by Petite Knit, to the extent that some of you said that this is essentially the Oslo Hat. And it had me wondering, how close to the Oslo Hat is the North Shore beanie, and are there others out there like that, sharing similar construction and techniques like this one? And I couldn't help myself, so I took a deep dive. I bought a bunch of patterns, some of which I already owned, but all of the ones I talk about today I have paid for, and I have dove into them so that we can talk about the triple rolled brim beanie, like the North Shore beanie by Haley Smedley, and see just how similar they are, or it is, to a few other patterns of its ilk. And that's what we're talking about today. I actually have a second North Shore beanie that I just finished today, and by golly, I have not blocked it yet. So you're going to need to forgive me because I could not help myself. I wanted to get into today's video as soon as possible. So I'm just going to be sharing with you what I have here, as this is, a finished product or whatever, unblocked. I'm going to tell you though that considering this is unblocked, it's looking pretty great unblocked, almost to the point where I might even just steam block it and not do an entire wet block. I haven't even tried this sucker on yet. I'm just ready to go. I'm feeling a little behind, need to get in here and do this video. So I will let you know here in the community when I have this finished and photographs of it up over on the Patreon, which I post kind of Instagram-like posts over on the Patreon for everybody. You don't have to be a paid patron to see those, but they're like Instagram posts. They're called quips. They're over on Patreon, little creative updates like this. So I will take a picture of it on me. I might even throw it on today, who knows? But this is my second of the North Shore beanie. Looking at it, by Haley Smedley of Ozetta. The first one, just to recap really quick before we dive into the meat of the episode. This was knit using Fiber for the People yarn, my own hand-dyed yarn, in the Born, Shorn, and Dyed Merino Rambouillet sport weight base held double. I used roughly 75% of 2 skeins of this yarn. This is in the B-sides colorway. This is a one-of-a-kind variegated color, but more variegated colors on this base are coming in the next couple of weeks, so pay attention for that. So that's what I did here. My row gauge with this yarn is a little shorter than it was with this, and I knit this with what the pattern called for. It was Camarosa in the Snef Nug base, held with Camarosa mohair silk, which is just a strand of lace weight yarn. It gives it a nice hearty chunky weight, and my row gauge was a little taller, therefore the hat, if I hold it by the brims together, is significantly taller, which is actually good. If you watched my last video where I talked about this one, you'll remember that I mentioned that the crown seemed a little short because it was doing this weird kind of bowing in right here in the middle when I would wear it like a fortune cookie. I haven't tried this one on yet. We probably will have to, but it's taller, so I have confidence that it's not going to do that as much. And I can't even tell you how much I love this yarn. It is, can we just for a minute? It is absolutely scrumptious. Now, both of these hats are triple brimmed, and that means that it is folded double and then folded over again. So you have a triple thick brim, if you will, and they look like this when they are unfolded. You can see there's a little row of reverse stockinette in there, and that's intentional. That makes the fold seamless. So when I fold this over, you don't see the edge, lost my pencil, where you began the stockinette for the hat, where you turned the hat. You kind of have to flip it in reverse directions. You put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. Using a German short row reverse technique. I talk a little bit about that in my previous video as well. I've come to understand why we call it a German short row technique, even though we're not doing any short rows, so you might be interested in going back and watching that. However, both of these are done, because it's the same pattern, with that technique. Now, when folks were saying that this is essentially this is essentially the Oslo Hat by Petite Knit, I had seen the Oslo Hat, so I knew what they were referencing. It had that triple thick brim all over stockinette, just a really cool kind of heavier brimmed hat. However, I do remember thinking when I was reading those comments, I was like, it's not exactly like the Oslo Hat because there's some crown shaping differences. And again, it had me thinking, well, if it is like the Oslo hat, maybe it's also like other hats by other designers or even similar designers or even petite knit that just utilize a construction that you kind of just standardize so that you get the same effect when you fold over a triple brim, which is what inspired me to do some digging. So I'm going to share with you today 6 patterns, the North Shore beanie and the Oslo hat included in that list. Like I said, have purchased all of these patterns. I have looked through the actual patterns and figured out what kinds of things we are seeing as it relates to the folded over brim and the construction. They all give you a similar style, optically speaking, but there are some differences, some subtle, some not so subtle. So that if you are interested in knitting a triple brimmed hat like this, I've done a little bit of the legwork so you kind of know what you're getting before you pay for any of those patterns, because you might be surprised that looking at 2 separate, just forget for a second that these are the same, 2 separate triple brimmed beanies like this, that the construction is not always the same on the inside. So one, is not necessarily equal to the other. I want to dive into this and I want to introduce to you, well, first, because it was brought up in the comments, we are going to see what is going on with the Oslo hat by Petite Knit. Is it identical to this? Nobody claimed it was identical. Okay. People just said it is this, or that is the same as this. And I think that those comments were coming from a person who has experience with the Oslo, not with the North Shore, and clocked some really interesting similarities. This is not a video trying to determine if a knitter is copying another. Absolutely not. Please don't go forth thinking this. There is room for everybody, and that's not what we're doing here today. Okay, moving on. All right, so the first one obviously is going to be the Oslo hat. I've created these little fun cards of each of the hats. I'm going to pop them up as I talk about them one at a time, but right now I'm kind of organizing them on my screen. Okay, we have the Oslo hat by Petite Knit. You can see it here. Now, right off the bat, if I'm comparing this to the North Shore beanie, which I'm also going to put on the screen so that you can see them at the same time, I noticed some pretty obvious visual differences between these 2 hats. For example, the Oslo hat has a very distinct rounded crown, whereas the North Shore beanie has a very distinct wedge or toe-shaped crown, and that is thanks to the fact that it is decreased very much like the toe of a sock worked from the ankle down or the cuff down. You have 2 points of decrease. You actually are decreasing 4 times, but at 2 separate sections. Well, I guess you are decreasing at 4 points along the hat, but it's not equal quadrants of the hat, right? You're decreasing on either side of 2 markers, we can put it that way, which gives us this wedge shape that you're seeing here. And then you're left with a series or a set of stitches at the top that are then Kitchenered closed. So you get kind of a wedge shape here, or like a shovel, kind of like a shovel shape. And the Oslo hat is not that. The Oslo hat is, and I have it here, it is a round crown and it is divided into fourths. So it is equally divided into 4 separate wedges of its own and decreased that way so that you have a nice rounded crown that fits across the crown of the head in a nice roundabout way, if you will. The Oslo hat is also a DK weight hat, and though the North Shore beanie has a DK weight option, this one was more of the chunky option, the worsted / chunky option. So the Oslo hat, DK weight, round crown, whereas the North Shore beanie here has a DK option, but this one is a worsted / chunky option with a wedge or shovel shaped crown. That's kind of differences, right? But in terms of similarities, they are both completely stockinette stitch. There's not a rib to be found, which I love. They also both feature a triple brim like this that is knit down on the inside of the hat. So it is tacked down on the inside of the hat, and then the work is turned. After you complete a little row of garter stitch, the work is turned using the German short row turning technique, and then the remainder of the hat is knit, essentially flipping the right side to the wrong side, and then that wrong side becomes the new right side. It all makes sense when you work the hat. It is very much a trust the process, but the reason it happens is so that you have a nice seamless transition when you roll the brim, so you don't see where you tacked the brim down on the inside. It's really very clever. Both the Oslo hat and the North Shore hat, and then a couple others that I'm going to talk about today, feature that particular triple brim technique. Now, all of this had me, like I said, diving into other patterns, which I very much did, and I realized the Oslo hat is not the only one that somebody could say this very much resembles. We could also look even further into Petite Knit's body of work and find a hat called the Terrazzo Hat, which is the hat compatriot of the Terrazzo sweater, which is on Gladys behind me. I love this hat. I think it's fantastic. And it actually features similar design techniques and design elements to the North Shore beanie and the Oslo, but there are some differences. But because it is a triple brim hat, we're talking about it today. So let's go ahead and compare this. I'm going to compare this to not only the North Shore now. Gosh, we're just going to be adding to the comparisons here. We're also going to be comparing it to the Oslo. In fact, I think what I'm going to do, just to make this a little easier, because we're going to do across the board comparisons at the end of the video, I'm just going to tell you what the Terrazzo has, and I'll make little mentions as I go. The Terrazzo hat is a 1x1 ribbed hat and stockinette. The brim of the hat is all in ribbing, and then it is tripled, and then the body of the hat is all stockinette stitch. The Terrazzo hat is worsted weight. This is a chunky weight. The Terrazzo hat is a true worsted weight. The triple brim of the Terrazzo hat is also knit down, and you use that same German short row turning technique and a little strip. I believe that inside, you know what, I want to confirm this. Let me pull up the pattern here just so that I can confirm for you. When it comes to the German short row technique for turning the hat, you are going to you're going to knit the cast on edge to the working or to the live stitches to create that folded over brim that is knit down or tacked down. And then you are going to do the German short row technique. But when it comes to that strip of reverse stockinette that you see in this hat here, it looks to me that you are doing that, except you're not doing reverse stockinette, you're just doing additional 1x1 rib. So it's the same concept. It's just incorporating, instead of the reverse stockinette, it's just incorporating more 1x1 rib. But I think what's really important going forward with this is that you know you're getting a triple brim. The triple brim is going to be ribbed, and there is a German short row flipping, flip it and reverse it technique happening to transition smoothly into the body of the hat after you fold over the triple brim, if that makes any sense. So that is the Terrazzo, very similar, great looking hat. This is also a rounded crown, and like the Oslo hat, it's a lot shorter than the North Shore. And I didn't actually bring this up before, but the North Shore beanie is a little taller. It just sits taller on the head. You can just see by looking at it that it's got a little bit more height there thanks to that wedge shape. You can see it in the photos here. The Terrazzo is supposed to be kind of more of like a skull cap on the top with a nice wide brim. And I know that because the brim is intentionally oversized. You cast on one number of stitches to begin your brim, and as soon as the brim is done, you decrease a significant number of stitches to get the crown size. Okay, so the brim is intentionally shaped to be oversized to give you that nice crown, not crown, I don't want to confuse it with the crown of the hat, but kind of like a crowning brim that stands proud a little bit more than your typical triple brimmed hat. So that is something that happens with this. You are shaping it to make that brim more intentionally oversized. And then of course we have a round crown that is divided into 4 sections. So it's just a quadrant crown, okay, with decreases around 4 markers. Now, we're going to carry on with Petite Knit's body of work here, just because she's got a few hats that are similar to this, and I was already scrolling down, and I found some other ones. And you know what I'm looking at here? Okay, I created a card for this next hat. I'm going to have to make an edit here in post that I put on my little card that I made on Canva, the Terrazzo hat. This is actually the weekend hat, and that is the next hat that I want to talk to you about. So you'll see it corrected on the screen, but the picture you see in front of you is Petite Knit's weekend hat. We have another triple brim, really cozy, extra warm hat, but there are differences here. It is different. It is not the same as something like the North Shore or the Oslo or the Terrazzo. It's different. And the first major difference that we have here is that this hat is an all over 1x1 ribbed hat. We do have a little bit of a wedge shape to the crown, and we'll get to that, but it is a DK weight hat. It is triple brimmed, all over ribbed. However, the triple brim is not knit down. It's not tacked down. It is just simply folded triple. And in order to accommodate that fold, Petite Knit has worked into the design areas of double knitting to essentially, I don't know, make the fold a little bit cleaner as it folds over 3 times, or well, 1, 2 times, 3 times. As you get that triple fold, she has double knit folding points that you are intentionally creating these points in the ribbing that denote where you will fold the hat over. So even though the triple knit is not tacked down or knit down, it is given a nice clean area where you know that this is where the hat is folded over to create that triple brim. It's a relatively simple process. You need to understand how to slip stitches purl-wise and slip stitches knit-wise, and very simple techniques in my opinion. But it's very strategically done, and I think it makes for really clean edges, as you can see from the photos. Take my word with a grain of salt. I have not knit the hat, but I have poured over the pattern and the photos, and I really do think it looks nice. So if you don't want your triple brim to be tacked down, this might be an option for you. However, it is an all-over ribbed hat. Okay, now getting away from Petite Knit for a minute, we're going to move into Sari Nordland's body of work, and I'm going to pull out the Iris hat. This one caught my eye as being a triple brim, and please know that I didn't go through all of the patterns on Ravelry. You probably are thinking right now, well, how did she not use this or this, or there's this one? I know this. I chose 6, and I chose ones that were kind of catching my eye as being similar in style and aesthetic as the North Shore, starting with Petite Knit and moving down. It's not terribly scientific, so if you have suggestions for other options that fit the bill here, please drop them down in the comments. It's, you know, it takes a village, all right? So we're moving into Iris by Sari Nordland. This hat has some very distinct differences, and we're going to begin with the fact that it is knit from the crown down, or top down. The hat starts at the crown and is worked down. Really interesting choice, and she mentions in the pattern that she does this so that you can try it on as you go. I think that's cool. This hat is also knit entirely in 1x1 rib. There is no stockinette to be found, and it is a DK weight hat. I believe she has an option for a DK and a DK and mohair pairing, which just kind of gives you a little bit of a heavier DK to really light worsted. And then she has a pairing of 2 fingering weight yarns, which can give you DK to light worsted. So, you know, take that for what it is. It does have a triple brim. However, it's just simply folded over 3 times. That's it. There are no special techniques being done to change the direction of anything. No German short rows, no double knitting to denote where you fold. You just simply figure out where you're going to fold it, make it triple thick, and you're good to go. And then it has a round, what I like to call windmill crown. It's divided into 6, and it gives that spiraling kind of windmill look at the crown of the hat, and that's done first. Because you're working from the crown down, you're doing that section first, which is kind of cool. If you've never knit a hat from the crown down, it is a really fun experience because you can try it on as you go. You can kind of determine your size as you go, which is, I guess, part of the beauty of trying it on as you go. If you're not sure how many stitches to cast on, or maybe you're using a different yarn weight, you can kind of work that out as you go, which is cool. So that's Sari Nordland's Iris. Similar style, similar aesthetic, similar vibe, but different construction, different method for folding over the hat, and just, you know, different. Now, last but not least is the big cuff hat. Now, this is a design over on Purl Soho. I believe it's a free pattern, by the way. And I'm not talking about prices for patterns. I mean, just check the links down below. I linked all this. So if you want to know more, just do some homework over there. We're talking about the construction. We're talking about the triple brim aspect of this and some various different things like that. Takes us to the big cuff hat by Purl Soho. This hat is knit entirely in stockinette stitch, but it does have that really nice big cuff that goes around the head, giving it a little bit more of a terrazzo vibe. It does not have an intentionally larger brim like the terrazzo. It's not shaped that way. It just very much looks that way, especially on the person that you see here. So it does have that really wide, what is the cassock? A Cossack hat?
Yeah.
Kind of. It's really lovely. This hat is considered a bulky weight hat because of the pairing of yarn that you're using here. So I would imagine that either of these, the weight that I got or the gauge that I got for either of these probably would match to what the big cuff hat is asking for. Now, this does have a triple brim. It is only folded and not tacked down. However, there is a flip and a reversal of directions to accommodate a nice smooth transition in the flip of the hat, okay, or in the fold over of the hat. So no German short rows, no tacking down or knitting together of cast on stitches with live stitches, just a normal 3-way fold, but you are changing directions before doing that. And it seems, based on what the pattern suggests, everything seems relatively simple and straightforward. There's some maneuvering around of stitch markers, which if you're not reading carefully or if you're distracted by something could become an issue. So you really want to take the time and read it before you get to that point, but nothing altogether too complicated. And it makes for a nice seamless folded brim. This hat also has a round crown that is separated in quarters, but it has just a slightly more wedge-shaped round crown than some of the others. It doesn't sit up there like a watch cap, which I think was the term I was looking for when I said skull cap. But it is round, a little bit more wedgy, I guess you could say, but otherwise a really lovely, simple triple brim hat. Okay, so now I want to do kind of like across the grid, all of these hats in one place and compare based on some of the, I don't know, like the more noticeable features of the hat. Not all the little nitpicky things like German short. Well, I did include the German short row turn in here, but we're just going to go through and we're going to compare by hats that are folded and knit down with that German short row turn technique. Folded, not knit down. A round crown, a wedge crown, all ribbed, all stockinette or all knit, a ribbed brim only, and then ones that are knit top down. Okay, I just feel like these are the biggest kind of at a glance categories that we could break this into. So looking at this, you can see that for folded and knit down with that German short row turn, we have the North Shore Beanie, the Oslo, and the Terrazzo. North Shore by Haley Smedley, Oslo, and the Terrazzo by Petite Knit. Moving over to folded but not tacked down or not knit down in the process, we have the Big Cuff by Pearl Soho, Weekend by Petite Knit, and the Iris by Sari Nordland. In terms of a round crown, and I mean like not only in design, but also just in the way that it looks, the Big Cuff I did put in the round crown category with the Oslo and the Terrazzo, but the wedge crown, which is a little bit more of some kind of a conical shape or a shovel shape, I put the Iris, the North Shore, and the Weekend in there because I feel like those have that little bit more of a wedge shape, particularly the North Shore. It is the most wedgy of them all. And in terms of hats that are all ribbed, meaning there's no stockinette, we have the Iris by Sari Nordland and the Weekend by Petite Knit. And then ones that are all knit or stockinette, we have the North Shore, the Oslo, and the Big Cuff. Now, we have like one, the Terrazzo, which does have a ribbed brim and a stockinette body, which I really love. That's the only one we have there. And then of course, the only hat that is knit top down in this collection is the Iris. And there you have kind of an at a glance of similarities, differences, different features that these particular rolled brim hats have. I am going to, in the after show, share with you a tier ranking of each of these hats in terms of my preference. Of course, I have knit two of the North Shore, so it would, stand to reason that this is my favorite. However, I do have preferences about these others. One in particular is my least favorite of all of these, and then one is my most favorite of all of these, and maybe it'll surprise you. But over on the after show on Patreon, that's what we're gonna do, is break down a little bit of a tier ranking of these 6 hats. But there you have it. This is kind of an answer to the comment of this hat being essentially the Oslo hat. Does it have a lot of similarities? Absolutely. But does it stand on its own? Is it its own hat? Yeah, definitely. So hopefully this helps. I hope if anything, this just inspires you to go out there and knit a triple brim hat, because I'm telling you right now, it's fabulous. If you're interested in checking out Fiber for the People yarn and to knit something like this, it works great for the North Shore Beanie. It would work great for any heavy worsted to chunky hat held together. Check Fiber for the People's website, sign up for the newsletter, because new variegated yarns are coming and it's gonna be gorgeous. However, I can also tell you, I absolutely like the Camarosa Snefnug. This yarn is just dreamy, it really is. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Drop down any other pattern suggestions you have for triple brimmed beanies if you have some others that you'd like us to check out. In the meantime, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.